The United Arab Emirates, UAE, is implementing cloud seeding technology to address water scarcity in the Middle East, which has experienced extreme heat and drought. The UAE averages less than 200 millimeters of rainfall a year, compared to London's 1,051 millimeters and Singapore's 3,012 millimeters. The UAE faces temperatures as high as 50 degrees Celsius during summer, with 80% of its landscape covered in desert terrain. The UN projects that by 2025, 1.8 billion people worldwide will face absolute water scarcity, with 83% of the population in the Middle East experiencing high levels of water stress. The UAE introduced cloud seeding in the 1990s to improve water shortage issues in arid regions. Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the UAE's vice president, allocated up to $20 million for research into cloud seeding in the early 2000s. The government introduced a task force called the National Center of Meteorology, NCM, in Abu Dhabi, which performs over 1,000 hours of cloud seeding each year to enhance rainfall. The NCM has a weather radar network and more than 60 weather stations, managing seeding operations and closely monitoring atmospheric conditions. Weather forecasters at the center can observe precipitation patterns in clouds and identify suitable clouds to seed, with the aim of increasing the rate of rainfall. Pilots take to the air with specialized aircraft loaded with hygroscopic flares on their wings, which contain about 1 kilogram of salt material components. After the seeding agent is introduced into the cloud, droplets increase in size, surpassing the cloud's capacity to sustain them against gravity, resulting in their release as raindrops. Skeptics have long argued that governments who introduce weather modification techniques to their skies are playing God. General Director Abdullah Al-Mandis stated that Abu Dhabi's program is based on scientific background and does not use silver iodide, a common crystal-like material used as a seeding agent in other countries. The NCM also started manufacturing its own seeding agent called nanomaterial, a fine salt-based material. A study led by Penn State researchers has found that trees are struggling to sequester heat-trapping carbon dioxide, CO2, in warmer, drier climates, potentially making them no longer a solution for offsetting humanity's carbon footprint as the planet continues to warm. The research team found that trees in warmer, drier climates are coughing instead of breathing, sending CO2 back into the atmosphere far more than trees in cooler, wetter conditions. Photosynthesis, the process through which trees remove CO2 from the atmosphere to produce new growth, is releasing CO2 back to the atmosphere under stressful conditions, a process called photorespiration. The rate of photorespiration is up to 2 times higher in warmer climates, especially when water is limited. The threshold for this response in subtropical climates begins to be crossed when average daytime temperatures exceed roughly 68 degrees Fahrenheit and worsens as temperatures rise further. The results complicate a widespread belief about the role of plants in helping to draw down or use carbon from the atmosphere, providing new insight into how plants could adapt to climate change. As the climate warms, their findings demonstrate that plants could be less able to draw CO2 out of the atmosphere and assimilate the carbon necessary to help the planet cool down. Plants currently absorb an estimated 25% of the CO2 emitted by human activities each year, according to the U.S. Department of Energy. This percentage is likely to decrease in the future as the climate warms, especially if water is scarcer. When we think about climate futures, we predict that CO2 will go up, which in theory is good for plants because those are the molecules they breathe in. However, the study shows there will be a trade-off that some prevailing models don't account for. The world will be getting warmer, which means plants will be less able to draw down that CO2. England will not adopt EU river pollution rules for pharmaceutical and cosmetics firms, as campaigners argue the country is falling behind. The EU has signed off on an update to the Urban Wastewater Treatment (UWWT) directive, which aims to tighten restrictions on pollution. The new rules require more nutrients from agricultural waste and sewage to be removed from waterways and apply standards to micropollutants such as chemicals from pharmaceutical waste. The EU has introduced a polluter pays principle, requiring cosmetic and pharmaceutical companies to contribute to the cost of treating wastewaters if they are causing chemical pollution. The new rule requires the most polluting industries to pay at least 80% of the cost for micropollutant removal. The EU claims this would lead to cleaner rivers, lakes, groundwater, and seas all around Europe. Campaigners argue that the UK must urgently mirror EU measures to make polluters pay to remedy the problems they cause and ban the use of harmful chemicals at source before they harm public health and the environment. England and Wales could end up lagging behind when it comes to water pollution, as other parts of the UK will adopt extra regulations on micropollutants. Northern Ireland, under the Windsor framework, has to adhere to urban wastewater treatment updates as it is obliged to have some of the same environmental rules as the Republic of Ireland. The Scottish government is proposing to adopt similar regulations to UWWT as it tries to keep regulations in line with the EU so the country could more easily rejoin the bloc in the event of Scottish independence. The new rules will also introduce systematic monitoring of microplastics in the inlets and outlets of urban wastewater treatment plants and permanent chemicals like PFAS. There are no plans for England to introduce compulsory monitoring at present.
Welcome to my channel, like and subscribe.